The following is intended for mature audiences. Hi friends, thanks for listening in. Now, before we dive in, due to popular demand, you know I have to traumatize you and myself and open the show with a 911 call.
Don't open that.
Fire rescue, what's your address?
Young man beating up a woman across the street.
Okay, are they outside or in a house?
It's in a garage.
Okay, can you tell if he has any weapons?
I think he had a knife, but I'm not positive.
Okay, can you tell if she's injured or he's injured?
Say again?
Are either of them injured? Can you tell from where you are?
Yes, there's a girl laying on the ground. He beat her up. I ran over there. I'm bleeding profusely here at the moment.
Okay.
I don't know what happened.
All right, can you tell if she's conscious or is she unconscious?
Say again?
Can you tell if she's conscious?
No, it does not appear so, no.
Okay, and what kind of injuries do you have?
I've been stabbed in the back.
With a knife?
Yes, I believe so. It was tough to tell.
Okay, you couldn't tell how long it was or anything?
We need an ambulance.
Yeah, we're sending them. We're sending them. And where is he? Is he
I think
in the area
garage,
still?
right across the street from my house.
All right. What's your name? Okay. All right, we're going to get the paramedics right out there.
Sir, what did the guy look like? Was he white, black, Hispanic?
He is white.
You know how old he is?
About 25 years old.
And what was he wearing?
Shorts and a t-shirt.
Do you know who he is?
I have no idea.
Does he live at that house, or?
No, he does not.
Does the female look familiar to you?
I believe it was the daughter of the house that lives over there. I'm not positive.
Can you have your wife or I don't want you moving if you've been stabbed, but can you have your wife or someone look out and see if he's still there?
I don't know. See if that car's still there, honey. It appears he's still there.
And you said you definitely saw a knife and that's what he hit you with in the back?
No, I did not see it, but my wife's looking at my back and it appears I got punctured.
Yes, Dad. In the neck, in the head, three puncture wounds.
Okay, we got units en route, okay?
Okay.
All right, just call us back if anything changes, all right?
Don't put that on me. All right, I'm bleeding pretty bad. So
okay, we got an ambulance and everybody en route. Just stay right there and stay calm, okay?
Okay, thanks.
All right.
911, do you need fire, police, or medical?
I need medical. We've called once.
Let me transfer you to fire rescue.
Yes.
We have units en route, ma'am. Everybody's en route. The deputies just got on scene. They have to secure before we can get in. Is your husband still conscious?
Yes.
Okay. Here, I can get you back on if you want to get some more advice from them, but they're on their way, okay?
Okay. I mean, I think we've got it under control, but I just want to make sure they are coming.
Yes, no, everybody's coming. The deputies have to secure this scene before the fire rescue can come in, okay?
Okay, well, he better secure it, or I'm going to keep...
There's units on scene across the street right now, okay?
Yes, okay, thank you.
All right.
All right.
Okay, you are not ready for this because this is one of the most disturbing and unbelievable cases I've covered so far. It all started on August 15th, 2016 in Jupiter, Florida. 19-year-old Austin Harroff, a college student at Florida State University, smart kid, played football, wrestled, had friends, pretty average life, goes to dinner with his dad, his sister, and his dad's girlfriend. They're eating at a Duffy Sports Grill, which is like your standard sports bar. But during dinner, Austin starts acting off, like really off, agitated, paranoid, all of it. So at some point, he just walks out, no explanation. He ends up at his mom's house and starts acting even stranger, like drinking cooking oil strange. So by this point, after the consumption of all the cooking oils, his mom thinks something's seriously wrong and drives him back to the restaurant to reconnect with his dad. But once they get there, another fight breaks out. Austin storms off again, and this time he disappears into the night, barefoot by the way, wandering the streets of this quiet neighborhood near Southeast Kokomo Lane. Not far from there, an older couple, John Stevens III and Michelle Mishcon, are just relaxing in their open garage. Neighbors said that's where they spent most of their time. They were the kind of couple who'd hang out with a glass of wine, the garage open, music playing, just enjoying life. But out of nowhere, Austin walks into the garage, and what happens next is just horrifying. So he attacks and stabs the couple. It's sudden, it's brutal. They don't really have a chance to defend themselves. Then at some point, a neighbor, Jeffrey Fisher, hears the screaming and runs over. He sees Michelle lying in a pool of her own blood, not moving. Then he sees Austin. Jeffrey tries to intervene, and Austin tells him, "You don't want this. You don't want a part of this." Then Austin attacks Jeffrey, hitting him in his head, stabbing him, but somehow Jeffrey escapes and runs back home, bleeding, and calls 911, which is the 911 call we all just heard. So deputies arrive at the scene and find Austin sitting on top of John Stevens III, who is now also just covered in wounds. Austin is chewing on his face, ripping flesh off with his teeth and spitting it out. It is reported that Austin could also be heard making growling sounds as he's chewing John's face off. Deputy Grace Zopf is the first on the scene. She tries to tase Austin, but he's overpowering her. Then Deputy Wayne Trokin arrives, and with the K9 unit biting Austin's arm, the guy just won't stop. He keeps chewing John's face even while getting tased, kicked, and dragged. Austin is yelling things like, "Fucking kill me, shoot me now, I deserve to die." Now, eventually, with a team effort, they're able to pull him off John and cuff him. And at this point, both John and Michelle are dead. Now, Jeffrey, the man who called 911, is rushed to the hospital with multiple stab wounds, a punctured lung, and a broken thumb. And luckily, he was able to escape with his life. And according to reports, at some point during police interaction, Austin had also begged for help, saying, help me, I ate something bad," with a sergeant asking, "What did you eat?" to which Austin replied, "Humans." And that right there is absolutely chilling. So at the crime scene, they found a bloody knife and a pair of scissors, both believed to have been used in the attack. Austin was taken to St. Mary's Medical Center. He was conscious at first, but then his organs started failing. Investigators believed he may have ingested something toxic from the garage, but to this day, no one really knows what exactly he ingested. His father later told the Palm Beach Post that his son had suffered some kind of psychotic break. Now, police originally suspected drugs, bath salts, flakka, but when the toxicology report came back, nothing, just marijuana, and even that was in trace amounts. So here's where this case takes an even weirder turn, because over the next few months, Austin's mental health became the focus of the investigation. One report claims Austin's Google search history included things like "how to know if you're going crazy," "white magic," and "I've become immortal." In prison phone calls, Austin went back and forth between apologizing and joking with his parents like nothing had happened. And it gets even stranger, because psychologists later reveal that Austin believed he was half dog, half man. He was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and suffering from acute manic episodes with psychotic features. One of the most bizarre diagnoses that he received was a condition called clinical lycanthropy, where you believe you're turning into a werewolf. So this wasn't drugs, this was a complete mental collapse. Now, after recovering from his injuries, Austin was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, attempted murder, and burglary. But his lawyers filed an insanity defense, and in November of 2022, a judge ruled him not guilty by reason of insanity. Austin was committed to a mental health facility instead of prison. And this decision, as you can imagine, devastated the victims' families. Now, this case is pretty hard to talk about. You have 2 people, Michelle Mishcon and John Stevens III. They're brutally murdered for no reason, and their killer didn't even know them. He just wandered into their lives during what was supposed to be this quiet and peaceful night and just took everything. Austin's father mentioned that he had suffered from mental health concerns, and my question is, if these were evident, why was nothing done to prevent it? Like, why weren't there any treatments? And I don't really know how to wrap this one up with a bow. There's no justice that feels satisfying, just a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of heartbreak. Welcome to a world where darkness and mystery converge. Navigate the depths of horror and true crime and join a society beyond the ordinary, where buzzworthy topics, paranormal tales, and listener-submitted experiences blend into a realm of the unknown. You have crossed into a place where the unusual and the terrifying are just the beginning. My name is Ralph Anthony, and welcome to the Scream Society podcast. Hello, Screamers. Welcome into another edition of this variety podcast from hell. Now, before we dive headfirst into the usual chaos, I'd be failing the ghouls if I didn't acknowledge the time of year I'm recording this. So let me just say, happy Pride. And I know that's going to piss some people off, but I don't give a fuck. Pride isn't just glitter and rainbows and drag queens death dropping in front of City Hall, though let's be real, all of that slays. To me, Pride is about honoring the hell people went through before us. It's about celebrating how far we've come, acknowledging how far we still need to go, especially in this version of America, and paying tribute to the ones who walked through fire so that we could even exist, love, and live out loud, so that we can have voices, so we can have podcasts, YouTube channels, we can express ourselves freely. And yes, I sure as hell see what's happening in the world right now. It's ugly, but that's exactly why we need to stay loud. We need to stay visible. We call out behaviors, no matter what political side they crawl out from under. And we pass the mic to the next generation of LGBTQ+ and guide them responsibly so they don't have to fight these battles again. Now, I also have to acknowledge that it's also Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. So with that, I just say, please check on your loved ones. Just because someone looks or says they're okay doesn't always necessarily mean it. And lastly, take a look at what's truly going on with the world around you. It is so devastating to see what's been going on with the LA raids. The media will always paint a picture of something going down one way, but we all know the National Guard was called out to heighten everyone's anxiety so there could be a reaction. It's just so awful right now. And if there are proper, humane steps to move forward, what we are seeing right now isn't that. Treating people like animals, separating families, mocking and saying disgusting, racist, ignorant things. It's embarrassing. Now, this podcast will always be a safe platform. No matter what the circumstances are, everyone deserves a chance at a better life. And I just want to know where the plot was lost as far as this country being a melting pot of different people. But enough of me preaching from my rainbow soapbox. Just let me end this by saying, please stay safe, stay spooky, and let's get into the madness. It's time for Sinister Subjects. I haven't done a good cryptid topic in a minute. I don't know why, but there hasn't really been any good UFO sightings. There have been some Bigfoot videos that have come out, but those all look so fake. Okay, so story time here. Just a baby one. The other morning, I think it was like a Wednesday or something, I was getting ready and I have this routine where every Wednesday I listen to Very Delta, which is a podcast hosted by drag queen Delta Work, who was a contestant on RuPaul's Drag Race when it was good. Anyway, love Very Delta because she talks about real shit and just goes off about real shit that I would go off about. Anyway, so this episode I was listening to had a guest, and it was the very gorgeous Matthew James Lent, who goes by Pearl while in drag and who also competed on a season of RuPaul's Drag Race as well. Well, there was a point in their interview where Matthew shares an experience with a certain cryptid. Take a listen to this.
Anyway, so I ended up going up to PNW.
And did you ever see Sasquatch while you were there?
I didn't see Sasquatch, but I do have a Bigfoot story.
Tell me, because I feel like there's people that think it's like ridiculous, and I don't know why that would be ridiculous. Like, I don't think that it's far off from 100% reality.
Yeah, no, I always thought it was kind of ridiculous.
And what happened? Like, where were you?
I did a lot of house sitting up there. I met this couple who turned out to be demented. So they lived in the middle of nowhere, like in Forks, Washington, and there was no neighbors for miles, and it was 45 minutes to the nearest grocery store. So I was house sitting and we were out in the hot tub at like midnight, just drinking. And the first night we were out there and not a lot happened, but all of a sudden, when all of the animals stopped making noises, all of the crickets stopped chirping, and it's just like this dead silence, that happened. And then we heard footsteps all around us. And it's creepy because the hot tub we were in, it's like a good 4 to 5 minute walk from the house. So it's deep in the woods. So all of a sudden it was dead quiet, just like in this room. And then all of a sudden we heard this roar, and it started like really low, like, ooh, and then it started to crescendo. And it went, and then it just kept going for 2 minutes.
Stop. That's
like,
so weird.
And you can't do that. Like, a human can't
right.
yell for that long. And we were frozen, like holding our cups, staring at each other while it was happening. And then it happened like 2 or 3 more times after that.
Wow.
And our initial thought was, wow, I can't believe elk would yell like that in the middle of the night. Like, what time is it? Don't they sleep? Because just immediately you're like, what the hell could possibly be making this noise? So I looked it up on YouTube. Elk calls sounded nothing like that. Looked up Bigfoot noise, and that's exactly what it sounded like. I don't recommend living that remote because of that.
So at one point, Delta mentions how people go missing in these beautiful isolated places. And the second she said that, I went down this rabbit hole, which could be an entire episode on its own, but I just want to get into a little bit of it here. So one story I came across goes way back to 1969 in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And Dennis Martin was this 6-year-old boy who went with his family for this little Father's Day weekend camping trip. It was Dennis, his dad, his grandpa, and his older brother. They were up at this place called Spencefield, which is this big open meadow surrounded by super dense forest, like beautiful, but also the kind of place where if you step just a little off trail, it's nothing but trees and silence. So you're basically in the middle of nowhere. Now, while they're up there, they run into another family also named Martin, weirdly enough, but not related. The kids all start playing together and come up with this little prank. They're gonna sneak up on the adults and scare them. Dumb little kid stuff. So Dennis, since he's the smallest, takes a different path to sneak around from the side. The other kids going one way, Dennis goes the other. And that was it. He never came back out. His dad realized something was wrong almost immediately. He started running down the trail, calling for Dennis. He runs for nearly 2 miles, yelling the whole time, and there's nothing. So this all kicks off this massive search effort. Like over 1,000 people show up. Park rangers, volunteers, the National Guard, and even the Green Berets. Yeah, the military, which is already kind of strange here. But despite all that, they find nothing. No clothes, no tracks, no blood, just gone. There was one weird thing though. A family hiking nearby that same afternoon, I think they were called the Key family. They reported seeing something super strange. And I got chills when I came across this part, but they said that they saw a rough-looking, hairy man running through the woods. He was hunched over and carrying something on his shoulder. And get this, it was the same general area where Dennis had gone missing. Now, the park rangers brushed it off. They were like, oh, it was probably a bear. And then the Green Berets, they were weirdly secretive. They brought all their own gear, didn't coordinate with anyone else, and didn't share any of their findings. They stayed totally separate from the regular search teams, which makes you wonder, right? Like, did they already know something was going on here? Then that night, this huge storm hits the area with 3 inches of rain in just a few hours. So any possible tracks or evidence out there was gone, completely just wiped out. There was this one possible clue. Someone found a set of small barefoot footprints leading into the woods, but they just stopped. They didn't lead anywhere, and the rangers said they probably weren't Dennis's, which is not very reassuring. And that's it. No body, no clothing, nothing. Now, people have theories, like they do with everything, but some say that he got lost and maybe died from exposure or got taken by a wild animal, which it's possible, but there should have been something, like something. Then there's the obvious Bigfoot theory. Whatever that hairy man was, that wasn't a man. People say the Smokies have had Bigfoot sightings for years. Weird sounds at night, trees knocked down, those creepy howls that no one can quite explain. And then there's the government cover-up theory. The whole Green Beret thing, some people think they were there because they knew there was something out there in those woods, like maybe something had been seen before, or this wasn't the first time someone went missing under weird circumstances. And there's even the portal theory, straight up interdimensional rift kind of thing. People think there are certain places, especially in like national parks and areas where there really isn't anything around, where the energy's just off. And sometimes people step into one of those spots and they just vanish. I know it sounds crazy too. And then there's also the whole Bigfoot using portals theory as well. I'm telling you, I love all of this shit, but like apparently that's why we've never been able to catch one, why it's been so hard, because they use portals to teleport. I don't know. It's a lot. I know it sounds crazy, like I'm talking about this giant ape humanoid creature thing. How does a child disappear in broad daylight with a bunch of adults just feet away and no one sees or hears a thing, and they find nothing, like not even a shoe? Personally, I think something took him, unfortunately, and I don't think that it was human, but this is why I have trust issues with nature. Anyway, shout out to Very Delta. So, there's always been something weird about people who need to be famous, like not just want the spotlight, but like need it. It's that level of obsession where it's not enough to be remembered. They need to be immortalized. And lately, I've been thinking a lot about Jill Roberts from Scream 4. If you've seen it, she literally says, "I don't need friends, I need fans." That girl murdered her friends just to get clout. That level of desperation is so terrifying. And as over the top as that sounds, I'm getting to a point, I promise. But as over the top as that sounds, sometimes real life actually is that unhinged as we've seen. So do y'all remember the whole OceanGate thing? You remember that? The Titan sub that went missing while trying to visit the Titanic wreckage back in 2023. It was all over the news for days. It felt like the whole world was watching, hoping these 5 people were going to be rescued. Every hour there were updates, how much oxygen they had left, how deep the sub was supposed to be, possible banging noises. It was actually pretty intense, and I remember checking my phone often. I believe I was on a Vegas trip too. So I was in Vegas drinking, having fun, but I always kept checking my phone to see what was going on with this whole OceanGate fiasco. But then there was confirmation, and the confirmation was that the sub had imploded with no survivors, unfortunately. But here's where things get a little dark, like pretty dark. So a longtime friend of OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush, a man named Carl Stanley, has come forward in a new book called Submersed and basically said that Rush may have intended to die down there, that this wasn't just some unfortunate accident, but something a lot more twisted. Now, according to Carl, Stockton didn't just want to explore the Titanic, he wanted to become a part of the story. Now, let that sink in for a second. This man, who had spent years building subs and trying to position himself as some kind of pioneer in deep sea exploration, was allegedly so obsessed with the legacy of the Titanic that he wanted to die at the wreck site. And if that wasn't enough, he allegedly designed a sub that would fail on purpose. Carl said it was a death dive, that this wasn't some tragic malfunction, that Stockton knew the sub wasn't safe and pushed ahead anyway. And it's not like no one tried to stop him, right? Because Carl had gone on a test dive with him and reportedly heard loud gunshot-like cracking sounds inside the sub. That's how much pressure was building up in there. He warned Stockton directly. He said this wasn't safe, that they needed to investigate the structural integrity of the sub. And as for Stockton, he basically just brushed it off, acted like Carl didn't know what he was talking about, and doubled down on the idea that innovation always comes with risk. But it wasn't just risky. This was life and death, and if what Carl's saying is true, Stockton chose death, and not just for himself, but for 4 other people. And that's the part that pisses me off about this. The other passengers on board were Hamish Harding, a billionaire adventurer, Shahzada Dawood and his teenage son, Solomon, and Paul Henry Nargilat, a respected Titanic expert. These were real people, people with families, dreams, lives, all of that. And now they're part of this awful story because someone allegedly wanted to make a legacy out of disaster. Oh, and it gets creepier because the sub was named Titan, which is almost definitely a reference to an old novella from the 1800s called Futility. It's a fictional story about this massive ship named Titan that sinks in the North Atlantic in almost the exact same way as the Titanic. And you're telling me Stockton Rush, obsessed with Titanic lore, just happened to name his sub that? It feels intentional, like he was trying to write his own ending here or something. Carl even described the sub as a mousetrap for billionaires, that Stockton needed more than just his own death to make the impact that he wanted. And if that's the case, then that's just not negligence, that's murder. And this isn't even the first time people raised the alarm. Engineers, sub-experts, even other people in the deep sea exploration community warned Stockton for years that the Titan just wasn't safe, that it wasn't certified, it wasn't pressure tested, that it could literally implode. And he ignored all of it. He called it fear, said people were stifling innovation. Innovation doesn't necessarily mean skipping safety. It doesn't mean gambling with people's lives just to prove a point. Like, you have to be on some other kind of demented shit. Okay, so we've all heard stories about wild exes, right? Like the ones who won't stop texting or suddenly show up where you just happen to be awkward, uncomfortable, creepy, and potentially dangerous. And I truly believe all situations like such should be taken seriously because there are exes who take things way too far. Which brings me to Aaron Goodwin. And if you don't know him, he's the big bearded guy from Ghost Adventurers, the ghost hunting show where they run around haunted asylums screaming, "Did you hear that?" and "Oh my God," every 5 seconds. And I only know how they act because my dad loves these shows. So anyway, Aaron's been through a lot of scary shit. Ghosts, demons, haunted dolls, but nothing compares to what he went through with his real life wife. So here's what happened with that. On June 5th of this year, Aaron stood in court and faced his estranged wife, Victoria Goodwin. Now, during the hearing, Aaron explained that he had believed for years he was in a solid marriage with someone he trusted. Then he found out she had tried to have him murdered more than once. According to him, she was also being blackmailed over it and had drained most of their savings trying to keep it quiet. He got really emotional in court. He said he thought he was married to his best friend, someone he laughed with every day, someone who made him feel loved and special. And then she was allegedly out here trying to hire someone to kill him. And like I said, not once, not in a moment of anger, but multiple times. Could you imagine finding that out about your spouse or your partner? And some of these topics that I've been covering, it doesn't even feel like real life, because they're so outrageous and so extreme. I'm just like, what is going on with people? Now, Aaron said that he was so scared after he found out that he hired armed security for weeks, which good move there. He was literally looking over his shoulder 24/7 because this bitch was crazy. Now, she was allegedly plotting with this guy named Grant Amato. Now, Victoria, and listen to this next part, wild. Victoria had watched a true crime documentary on Paramount Plus called Control Alt Desire, and somehow thought it'd be a great idea to slide into Grant Amato's DMs. Now, Grant Amato was sentenced to life in prison after becoming obsessed and would send money to a cam model. He shot and killed his parents and brother after he was banned from reaching out to the model, whose name was Sylvie, and she was from a porn site. They cut him off financially and told him to leave their home after it was revealed he was stealing money from them. And that's when he decided to leave their house when they asked him to, but he then came back and killed them all. Now, apparently, Victoria and Grant started talking in March of 2024, and not long after that, they formed some sort of relationship, then allegedly planned to kill Aaron together. So authorities found out because Grant had a phone in prison, which, how? And they intercepted the messages, which foiled the whole plot. Victoria was arrested in March of 2025 and eventually took a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder, and on June 5th, she was sentenced to 36 to 90 months in prison. So 3 to 7.5 years, which is honestly not that long. Not that long for a woman who was clearly unhinged here, right? Aaron filed for divorce, duh, and said there's no possibility of reconciliation, which, yeah, I mean, if your spouse even once tries to hire someone to kill you, you don't necessarily go to couples therapy, right? You go to court. It's clear that they were obviously going through some sort of separation, and that's where my theory comes in, that maybe during their separation sometime last year, she was set off. Not to mention, Aaron is a public figure, so maybe seeing him succeed or get any type of recognition set her off. And to reach out to a killer in prison on a phone he wasn't even supposed to have sounds so far-fetched and fictional. I can't believe this is real life. I will say, though, that scary exes are no laughing matter. And I think we tend to crack jokes or mock and even dismiss unhinged behavior from exes. But I think it's a serious issue that needs to be taken more seriously. And if the system isn't going to do anything, then I strongly believe you have the right to weapon up, to protect yourself. I've seen too many horrible outcomes from these situations. So, do we know who Candace Cameron Bure is? We all know her as DJ Tanner from Full House and Fuller House, and she was great in those, but in the real world, she's just one of those people who politically we don't align. So during a recent episode of her self-titled podcast, she goes on this tangent about horror films. She's having a conversation with her youngest son, whose name is Lev, and he's 25. And just take a listen to what she had to say.
I don't even want someone watching a scary movie in our house on the TV, because to me, that's just a portal. Listen, I'm in the film industry. I understand how it all works. However, there's still something that can be incredibly demonic while they've made it. And I feel like it's a portal that gets opened up and let in. And that just reminded me, like, you posted something a while back about liquid death. And you're like, so do you want to buy a product that is literally being cursed as it's going out into distribution?
I can tell you this much. Candace Cameron Bure movies do not play in my home because it'll open up a portal to becoming a... All jokes aside, I completely disagree. And I have friends who have this same view, and I've challenged them myself. And it just, to me, it comes down to, if you invite that energy in, I don't think watching a movie is going to open this portal up and your house is all of a sudden going to be attacked by different forms of demons and dark forces. And I think that's a little bit dramatic. Now, I'm not trying to jinx myself here, but with all of this work that I put into this podcast and research and topics that I talk about, nothing has happened to me yet. I'm not asking for it to be, but I think when it comes to that, I have a very strong mind as far as blocking that out and not really putting energy into that, and just really telling myself that what I'm watching on film is make-believe. It's like something you tell a child. Like, it really isn't that deep. Like, I know plenty of religious folks who love horror films, and I think horror movies are the exact opposite, because for myself and most other horror fans, I think horror is just this amazing way to deal with shit, to deal with trauma. And I think if we deal with that, I think that leads to more happy people. If it's helping people cope with stuff, if they're depressed and these movies bring them comfort, something about this film unlocks a core memory for them. Just, I think it's so much more than just having these Hallmark movies be the only way to cheer yourself up, or a Disney movie. Like, the horror genre is shit on so much. It's disheartening, and I think it's misunderstood, but I think that's part of the charm of it. That's why a lot of us, quote unquote, weird people can identify with the genre, because it's so misunderstood. It's so looked down on. It's called evil. It's called satanic. It's called all of these things. It can be so many other genres too that could open up these so-called portals. I mean, you have action movies that have extreme violence. You have crime films. And how is that not seen as demonic? Because most of these cases that I cover on this podcast are more demonic than Chucky the Killer Doll. I'm just saying, though. I'm just saying. So, like, there's so many different nuanced approaches to this topic, and I don't know. Candace Cameron just doesn't seem like a very fun person to be around. Let's move on. Okay, so remember last episode, I kept making these little comments here and there, making jabs at a certain influencer, James Charles. And some of you even called me out for it, which is totally fine. I wasn't offended, but let me just pull up one of the messages that I received. What was with the little comments about James Charles? It wasn't funny and made you look like a hater tearing down another queer creator. Whatever that was. Probably a fan, but moving on. So yeah, I wasn't going to do this story, but after getting that, I was like, now I'm going to go in even harder. Now, let's address the demon that is all of that. Because for some reason, the allegations of him that surfaced during the pandemic of him preying on straight men and messaging underage boys wasn't enough, because we're all just accepting he's out here still with brand deals, Coachella appearances, award show appearances, and is somehow still this huge representation of the LGBTQ community, right? And I'm not doing this because I want to bash someone. Like I've mentioned earlier, if you haven't noticed, our political climate is pretty scary right now, and the community, the LGBTQ plus community, is being targeted for whatever reasons. And I just think that right now we need to be more responsible with who we have in the forefront with representation and all of that, as far as like influencers and all of that goes, because these are what people see in the forefront. Like, this is what the masses see. So yeah, we're going to get into it. Let's just get this next part out of the way, because frankly, it's not shocking. It just further cements James Charles as a shitty human being. And so many other influencers have been coming out exposing his behavior for years. Here's the deal. If you have not a clue who I'm talking about, lucky you. But beauty guru turned controversy magnet James Charles somehow got wrapped up in a domestic abuse case between TikTokers Kayla Malik and her ex, Evan Johnson. Long story short, Kayla posted 2 bombshell videos accusing Evan of abuse, showed bruises, and the guy ended up pleading guilty. He's now banned from contacting her and even from being on social media, which, amazing. I'm glad she got justice. I'm glad she won her case. So you're probably asking, how does James Charles play into all of this? Now, allegedly here, when the couple split, Kayla had texted James to tell him that the relationship with Evan had ended, to which James Charles responds, "Can I have him now?" What? If I text one of my friends that I'm in some kind of trouble with a partner, and then I follow up with like, it's over, I'm free of that, and they respond with a "Can I have him now?" Even as a joke, cut off. You're cut. So Evan, the abuser, has this friend who did an interview claiming that James had some sort of relationship with Evan, mentioning how James Charles had paid Evan for sexual favors and allegedly tried to help him during the whole fallout, allegedly, because James Charles has a history of preying on straight men, as I've said already. Now, obviously, James then came out denying everything, his usual. He then said they were briefly friends, that he doesn't support Evan, and that he was manipulated. So Evan Johnson, like I said, was found guilty of his crimes, thankfully. But my question here now is, will James ever pay for his? Now, as if my level of disgust for this person couldn't grow anymore, take a listen to this clip put out on May 15th. And just a trigger warning, it describes accusations of inappropriate behavior with a minor. Take a listen.
Hello everyone, my name is Ethan Rhett, and if you don't know me, maybe this will help you. Before I get into the story, I want to say I am not meaning to hurt anyone's career or damage anyone's reputation. I just keep seeing things pop up on my page, and it's sickening, and it triggers me in a way, you know. But back when I was 14, you know, I started blowing up. I maybe created my account 7 months prior before I turned 14 years old. I ended up blowing up, maybe around 700,000 followers on TikTok. Everything was doing good. I loved it. It was just amazing. James Charles commented under my post and liked the video, and it was exciting. You know, that's the biggest creator I've ever been in contact with or ever commented or liked my post, you know. Anyways, he ends up following me and he messages me, "Hey." I obviously respond. I'm excited, but that's where everything went downhill. It got really, really weird. Anyways, when we start going back and forth on TikTok, he initiates after a few days, "Hey, add me on Snap." I'm like okay, you know, I was trying to hide the fact that I was excited. You know, it was really cool. I was hoping that this was gonna jumpstart my career even more into being an influencer. Anyways, me and James start going back and forth on Snap, and he eventually asked me, you know, what do I plan on doing long term? So obviously my social media was picking up and et cetera, et cetera. But at the time, I really didn't know. Eventually ended up telling him I wanted to get into modeling or acting, or maybe even both. He said, oh my God, you'd be such a good model, you know? You would do so well modeling and just stuff like that. And obviously I didn't see anything of it. I was young. I was happy he was saying I could do that, especially coming from a really big and noticeable influencer. You know, I thought it was great. Brother kind of didn't tell me in a way, but my brother he kind of let me do my own thing, but he kind of noticed, you know, he didn't, how do I word this? My brother didn't think about it as the way I thought about it. My brother kind of noticed something and I could tell, but it's just, he was kind of just letting me do my own thing. Anyways, James started becoming super aggressive with me. He would ask me to send him photos of my happy trail, which I didn't even have at the time. And because I was 14, I didn't have a happy trail, and I had armpit hair, but he didn't ask for that. And I kind of avoided the question because it made me super, super uncomfortable. I told him I shaved my happy trail because I was afraid to tell him that I didn't have a happy trail or have any hair on my body other than my armpit hair. Anyways, you know, he kind of started being aggressive extremely after that. He told me, well, don't shave your happy trail again, because I liked that. And he was very intense about how he said it. I know it doesn't sound bad, but it was only if you could be in my shoes when that happened. It made me super, super uncomfortable. Anyways, I go to bed that night and I wake up to his sent to me, and it made me very, very uncomfortable. He would send me a photo of his behind in the mirror, and he also sent me a video of him in the shower, which those videos are somewhere on the internet. I'm sure you can find it. If I looked, I could probably find them in a Google Drive that we actually had for my lawyer. Anyways, he started realizing that I wasn't into that. He started kind of making threats towards me, saying he was going to diminish my career. He could easily ruin my career, just saying he was going to ruin my career, go out and tell people I was gay and I was closeted, which isn't an issue. That's not an issue at all, but it was still the fact that I was a 14-year-old boy, and it scared me. It freaked me out.
This is just the most recent one of dozens of allegations. And yes, some can be absolutely fabricated. I'm acknowledging that, but we can't dismiss all of them. Remember, a 16-year-old by the name of Isaiah had accused Charles of grooming by sending nude photos and pressuring him into sexting, despite him knowing his age. Back in 2021, additional minors came forward with similar allegations, including a 17-year-old who claimed Charles continued to send flirty messages after learning his age. And then Charles released that video of him titled "Holding Myself Accountable" and admitting to sending sexually explicit messages to 2 individuals. And he just described his behavior as reckless and desperate, and that these conversations should have never happened. Am I about to get canceled right now? No, I don't care. Let me be very clear, and I might offend some of you, but I just have to be completely honest. Being gay does not exempt you from being held accountable for creepy or manipulative behavior, period. And I am beyond exhausted watching people bend over backwards to defend him, saying things like he's young, there's 2 sides to every story, he didn't know, cancel culture is so toxic, which I agree with, but come on. I even see people out here blaming the victims. Like, do y'all even hear yourselves? James Charles has a history, a long, documented, messy-ass history of crossing boundaries, messaging underage fans, manipulating people, and brushing it all off with half-ass apologies and learning moments, and yet somehow he always lands on his feet. Why? Because people are way too quick to excuse this trash behavior when it comes from someone who's young, queer, and famous online. Like, what is he going to do? He's going to disappear for a bit, and then after this, post a TikTok, and then suddenly everyone's going to just embrace him again. And you know what? That's just not on him. That's on us. That's on the beauty community, the fans, the influencers, the brands who stay silent and keep cutting checks for him. Like, that's on every single person who acts like holding someone accountable is bullying, or who thinks that he's apologized, so let's just move on, even when the behavior just keeps happening. It's especially on the ones who stay quiet when they know damn well what's happening behind closed doors. These are minors, love. Because let's not pretend this is just about James Charles here. This is about this pattern where people will protect someone if they're famous enough, pretty enough, or fall under a certain identity, like being queer, to justify not speaking out. As if queer people can't be manipulative. As if being gay means you're incapable of harm. And to me, like, that's not allyship. That's enabling. And that's why it's so frustrating to me. It's just because, like, these are the clowns at the forefront. And I know I'm being repetitive, but these are the clowns at the forefront. This is the queer representation that gets out to the masses, promoting these harsh criticisms and now actions that are negatively impacting progress. I don't know. Like I said, I didn't want to do this segment because I don't want to just come off as like being a hater or bashing someone, but like I think we just need to look at certain people and their actions and really question. Like, we need to question everything. We're not just because someone apologizes for being creepy and doing things that's illegal. Just because we get an apology video, like, it's just, it drives me insane. And to any victims out there of domestic or predatory behaviors, my heart is with you, and I will always advocate for you and stand by you. Let's move on. Welcome into Terrifying But True, the segment where I choose one random true crime or paranormal case and do a little deep dive on it. Today's case, it's a tough one. It's also one of those cases that feels disturbingly relevant right now. You know what I mean. Like, you look around at what's happening right now politically. Like I said earlier, people being so openly hateful and hostile online. So I think it's important to take a look at the past, no matter how disturbing it may be. Today I'm talking about Gary Mattson and Winfield Mauter, a kind, loving couple who were murdered in 1999 by two brothers who believed they were doing God's work. These killers weren't just hateful, they were radicalized. They were deep into white supremacy, anti-Semitism, anti-gay propaganda, and they thought they were part of something bigger, a war even. Sound familiar? So yeah, if you're thinking this sounds a lot like the same kind of extremist rhetoric you see plastered all over social media today, you're not wrong. Let's get into it. When the unthinkable becomes reality, we find ourselves questioning everything, as some stories are too terrifying but true. Gary Mattson and Winfield Mauter, these two were partners. They had been together for 14 years and lived in this peaceful little area called Happy Valley, just outside of Redding, California. From the outside, it looked like they were just living a quiet, plant-loving life. But what happened to them was horrific. Gary was 50. He had a master's degree in environmental horticulture from UC Davis. And honestly, the man was a force for good. He helped start the Redding Farmers Market, not just to sell produce, but to help feed people who were struggling. He also helped create the Carter House Natural Science Museum for kids and the Redding Arboretum. Like, this guy wasn't just growing flowers, he was growing community. He had been married before to a woman named Marcia Howe. She also helped found the Carter House Museum, and together they had a daughter named Clea. After the marriage ended, Gary eventually met Winfield Mauter, who went by Winfield or Winnie, two close friends, and the two really seemed to build this beautiful life. Winfield was 40. He had a degree in anthropology and was working part-time at Orchard Supply Hardware in the garden section. He was also attending Chico State and would speak at local high schools, offering support to students, both gay and straight. He really made it a point to be there for the younger generation. In 1997, the couple started plants2go.com, which was an online nursery that specialized in plants for hot climates. Now, enter the Williams brother, Matthew, who was 31, and Tyler, who was 29, had lived in Palo Cedro, which is a small town nearby. They ran a landscaping and lawn service out of their parents' home. Neighbors said that the family was deeply religious, like really intense, sermons blasting through the windows, that kind of thing. People said that they were quiet, that they kept to themselves, and didn't let the boys get involved in any extracurricular, no sports, no clubs, nothing. Now, before they had moved to Palo Cedro, the family lived in Gridley. When they eventually moved to Redding, the father apparently told neighbors that God told him to move the family there. That's a bold claim. And even after the move, militia-related mail was still being delivered to their house, so already this was not your average suburban family here. Matthew, the older brother, had a stint in the Navy, but he didn't stay long. While living in Idaho for a while, he joined a charismatic Christian church, but somewhere along the way, things just got darker for him. He started getting deep into white supremacist and anti-Semitic content online. He was reading hate-filled literature, listening to extremist voices, and spiraling into something really dangerous. Fast forward to July 1st of 1999. That morning, Gary's dad, Oscar Madsen, tried to call his son, but got a strange answering machine message instead. It had said that Gary and Winfield were sick and were heading to San Francisco to see a specialist friend. The message sounded off. The man in the recording didn't sound like himself, like he was being forced to say it. There was another voice in the background telling him to just calm down, and that voice didn't sound like Gary or Winfield at all. So now worried, Gary's brother, Roger, drove to their home in Happy Valley, and that's when he found their bodies. Gary and Winfield had been shot to death in their bed. They were both naked, and the room was a scene of absolute horror. Blood on the walls, the ceiling, shell casings from a .22 caliber gun everywhere. It looked like there had been no break-in and nothing was stolen, but Gary's Toyota Tercel was missing, which would eventually be found 50 miles south near Yuba City. Now, investigators believe that after being forced to make that answering machine recording, the couple was made to lie in their bed. Then the killer stood on chairs at the foot of the bed and opened fire. Gary was shot 5 times in the head and once in the back. Winfield was shot 8 times, 7 in the head, 1 in the neck, and this was calculated, this was cold, so brutal, and for what? Now, a week later, on July 7th, police arrested Matthew and Tyler Williams in Yuba City as they were leaving a shopping mall. They both had handguns, and Matthew was wearing a bulletproof vest. They had used Gary's credit card to order thousands of dollars worth of ammo and tactical gear and had it sent to a private mailbox under Gary's name. That's how police were able to track them down. Searches of their homes turned up white supremacist literature, including materials from the World Church of the Creator, a group that preached violent hate under the guise of religion. Authorities found black powder, .22 shells, and even a hit list with names of prominent Jewish leaders in Sacramento. And it gets worse. Investigators tied them to a series of arsons that had happened just weeks earlier. 3 synagogues and an abortion clinic, all torched within days of each other. These weren't random acts, they were coordinated hate crimes. Matthew even later admitted that he had been one of the several men who set those fires. Tyler, the younger brother, eventually confessed. He told investigators that he and Matthew had talked about killing Gary and Winfield for about 2 weeks before it happened. Now, Matthew had met the couple at a Redding farmers market where they both had booths and told Tyler they were gay, and that right there was enough to justify what they did in their minds. Tyler claimed that on the night of the murders, Matthew did all the shooting while he stood by. He also claimed the couple had been asleep, but that doesn't really line up with the answering machine message. I mean, it's clear that they were awake. That message was likely one of the last things that they were forced to do before they were essentially executed. Matthew later gave interviews from jail. He told reporters that he didn't believe what he did was murder. He called it God's judgment. He said homosexuality was a sin and he wanted to inspire others to follow in his footsteps. He didn't expect to serve much time, but he really thought he'd be seen as some kind of martyr. It's sickening. People from Matthew's past came forward too. A former Navy friend said Matthew was very self-conscious about being perceived as gay. Another friend from Idaho, Dan Martin, said the two had a very close, possibly romantic friendship. According to Dan, Matthew became emotional after finding out that he was gay, and some think that might have been the final spark that led to the murders. In 2001, the brothers pleaded guilty to the synagogue and clinic arsons. Matthew got 30 years, Tyler got 21. In 2002, Matthew had attacked a prison guard with a handmade hatchet and was put in solitary confinement. Then, in November of that same year, he ended up taking his own life in his cell. He fashioned a blade from a razor and a pen, fastened it to his wrist with dental floss, and bled to death. He left behind a Bible open to Psalm 22 and 23 and a homemade amulet with Bible verses inside. Before he died, Matthew mailed a confession letter to Tyler's lawyer, taking full responsibility for the murders and saying that he didn't want to hurt his brother's chances, but the court didn't buy it. Tyler was still held accountable. In 2003, Tyler pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder. In court, he apologized and said he regretted trying to take God's place in deciding who deserved to live or die. He was sentenced to 29 years to life, which he'll serve after finishing his time for the arsons, and he won't be eligible for parole until 2053 at the earliest, when he's going to be in his mid-80s. And I've said this a lot too. It is absolutely terrifying how easy it is for hate to grow when it's dressed up as righteousness, right? And the fact that this kind of thinking, this violent extremist garbage, is still so loud today, it's really scary. And I am a firm believer that fighting extremism with extremism is not the way, and we've seen recently it makes shit worse. It puts targets on our back. It's exhausting. It's scary. People just existing, loving who they love, isn't a threat. Radicalized hate, that's the real danger, and it always has been. And now let's dive into Ralph versus the Rot, where I take on your questions and do my best to give you a fair perspective and advice, because society is fucking decaying and I'm here to call it out. As always, if you would like me to share an experience of yours, share something you find creepy or interesting, or simply want to ask me a question, send an email to screamsocietypodcast@gmail.com. Let's get into these questions here. Hey Spooky King, how would you navigate this? I've been helping one of my friends' husbands with some tips on a position he's going for. We work together and I've kept things professional, but it feels like some of his emails and texts are flirty, telling me how cute I look, and even to the point of him offering to hang out sometime. We all know where this leads, I think, but do I tell my friend, or am I making something out of nothing? I think you have to really navigate this situation very carefully, because from one perspective, they could just be a really friendly person and just maybe are super thankful that you are helping them, you're guiding them through this journey to promotion or whatever their goal at this job is. On the other hand, I've seen this a lot. I've heard about this a lot. There are a lot of horny people out there, and I think you just need to be extra careful. Don't feed into it. If they're sending you these messages, just respond like, hey, maybe that's not a good idea, or sure, I'd love to hang out, and follow up with something like the name of your friend and whoever this person is. Like, let's all grab lunch, or let's all go to a movie. Like, always try to include your friend. I wouldn't hang out with them by themselves, though. I think that would be in poor taste. I'm not entirely sure how the relationship between the two of you are. But yeah, I if it makes you uncomfortable, definitely set those boundaries. And if it keeps going, then I would say to reach out to your friend and just be like, hey, like, check your boy. And as far as the telling you that you're cute, right there, shut it down immediately. Be like, hey, like, I just want to keep this relationship professional and out of respect for your friend, like maybe giving me these types of compliments isn't the best thing, but I'm not entirely sure how the whole dynamic is though. So that's why this one's a little difficult. But if things keep happening, the messages keep coming, I'm a tattletale. I would rat them out to your friend. Good luck. And if you do have a follow-up, please follow up with me. I would love to see how this one plays out. Gonna wrap it up right there, but I am so excited. I've been waiting this whole episode to tell you all, but if you don't follow me on social media, then you don't know that I have merch finally. It has been a long time coming. I've been doing podcasting for going on 3 years now, and I've always wanted merch, but I kind of wanted to hold off because Scream Queer Podcast, I wasn't sure I wanted to keep that name. So then I rebranded to the Scream Society, and I'm like, you know what? I love the whole Scream Society brand that I've created, the whole rebrand, all of it. So I was like, you know what? This one's going to stick. So let's work on some merch. But yeah, for the month of Pride, I am doing 20% off everything. So go ahead and get those Final Gay, Final Ghoul, Final Girl, I'm the Killer shirts. Those are probably my favorite. They have a Scream Society logo in the back. But yeah, I just wanted to let you all know that I finally have merch. Check all the links in the bio. I'm trying to start a cult here, so I need your help. And with all of that said and out there, thank you so much for listening in today. Sorry, I got a little unhinged there for a second. I look forward to making more episodes for you all. Thank you so much for your support, for your kind messages, for your love. And yeah, until then, I will scare you all on the next episode. Happy Pride, whatever that was. Thank you for tuning into the Scream Society podcast, hosted, written, produced, and edited by yours truly, Ralph Anthony. Help the society grow by subscribing on your favorite platform and leave a rating and review. I always strive for 5s. Have a horror or paranormal experience? Want me to answer your questions on the show? Submit to beacons.ai/The Scream Society. Connect with the podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Scream Society Podcast. And until next time, I'll scare you on the next episode.